What's up, everybody? Welcome to Mongols. This is our prediction show where we look ahead and try to guess what we think is going to happen as the Riverhounds head to Birmingham this weekend. I am Mike. Joining me for this one is Justin. Justin, it's been a few weeks. What's good, man?
Yeah, it's been a good couple of weeks. Man, I am loving these cool mornings that have been happening in central Pennsylvania the last couple of days. Fall is my favorite season of the year, so it feels like it's coming. Plus, I got my first pumpkin cream cold brew at Starbucks yesterday, so can't complain about that.
Yeah, for those of you watching the stream, I'm actually wearing like a track jacket right now because it has been cooler here as well. I love it. Now it does look like it's going to get up back into the 80s and 90s next week, which is a bit of a bummer. But yeah, this little taste of fall for sure. Definitely appreciate it. Um, there's been a lot that's been happening sort of around the team, around the USL that I just sort of want to pick your brain on before we actually get into the thoughts on Birmingham. So the first thing was the Hounds kind of teased this idea that they were going to be revealing the crest and information about the women's team. That did not happen, but they did announce sort of two things. One was that they partnered with a company called Goals, which is a Pittsburgh-based startup that's focused on growing the business side of women's sports. And they also partnered with a design firm called Brandios, who's going to be working on the crest and the brand. What's interesting about the Brandios is that, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right or not, but you can actually go to their website, you can go to their Instagram page and stuff and see other designs that they've done. So if you're looking to try to get a sense of what the W team's brand could potentially look like, that's a place to go. It is kind of cool. There's kind of stuff all over the map there. Um, and additionally, there were sort of rumors swirling. None of this can be substantiated, but that there is the potential to bring in somebody completely new from the outside to help coach and manage the women's team as well. We had sort of speculated for a while, like, is it going to be somebody from inside that's already here? It kind of feels like this whole thing is going to be its own brand, its own thing that will can sort of continue to grow through W, potentially through Super League, all of that. So, just thoughts on all of that, Justin?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting that it has seemed like the goal of the Riverhounds for the last couple of years has been building from the inside, right? Like you're building the academy, you want to use those players. Even with the W League team, it's like, hey, we want to give the girls who come up through the academy an opportunity to play professionally, get that professional experience. And then it's like when it comes to coach, it's like, oh, we're gonna go from the outside and like find a coach to bring into the academy. Not that that's the wrong decision. I just think it's interesting that like this kind of has been the mojo for several years now. Um, and not that it, especially on the men's side, it hasn't come to fruition yet. Um, but it is just interesting, like how many players, I think even through the City game last week, they were talking about how, player on Duquesne, players at Pitt who came up through the academy, all that kind of stuff. And it is just interesting that seems to be a departure. The second thing that I think is interesting in that is just how careful the Riverhounds seem with branding lately. Going back to your conversation with the kit guy, I'm blanking on his name at the moment, but just like how carefully they thought out the branding for that, and then how they're already thinking about next year's kits, and they've gotten some proofs back and stuff like that. I think it is just interesting that like yeah, it was like, oh, here's the no, I don't want the branding yet. I want you to make sure the branding's good before you release it. Just looking around the soccer world and having seen some clubs, do renamings or um, crest releases that did not go well. I don't want the Hounds to be one of those stories. So I think I'm okay with them having not released anything yet.
Yeah, I agree. I'm all for patience in this as long as we end up getting it right. And it sounds like, especially with kind of Jeff at the helm, there haven't been a lot of misses. So I'm okay with them sort of taking the time. I did reach out to the team to see if there was a chance that we could maybe talk to somebody from Goals, which sounds like a really cool organization, and Brandios, and we'll sort of see if anything comes of that. Especially the Brandios thing could be a fun visual show, we'll say. Uh, just in picking their brains about how they approach design and all of that could be really really cool. So lots of cool stuff happening on the W side. Um, I mentioned, I think in the reaction show that the USL Super League kicked off last weekend. I think there's 8 teams there. The one thing that I did think was interesting, and I don't think we actually talked about this, but all of the games are on Peacock, which at first I was like, oh, it's on Peacock. Okay. But part of me kind of appreciates that because in this world where the Hounds play on ESPN2, but sometimes they're on CBS and sometimes, they're somewhere else and you have to have a cable subscription and things like that. What are your thoughts on, I think we've had the conversation about sort of MLS being on Apple and like you can only access them on Apple. Where do you stand on this? Like everything on one, or do you like this idea of trying to be on some cable or not, or just thoughts in general?
No, I think it is interesting, because I think leagues have this is something that I think every league or every individual kind of league has to figure out. And I think what MLS has done really well, I think originally I was pretty upset that they were on Apple and it's like another subscription, another thing. But it's like you always know where to find them, and they can do documentaries and they can do pregame shows and they can do postgame shows and they can do all these things that have allowed them to grow. My complaint right now with the current situation in soccer is what the USL is doing of like, I'm never really sure where the game is going to be. Now I have to, it used to be like, I know I just pull up ESPN Plus, I'm good to go, unless it's on, a national broadcast. But like, I always knew where to go. Now it's like, oh, it could be on Paramount Plus, it could be on Galazo, it could be on ESPN, it could be, I don't know where to find it. And the NWSL has the same problem right now. They're on 5 different networks, and you can never figure out. I was like, even just looking last Saturday night, I was like, I just want a game to watch right now, and I couldn't find one that was on a network that I could access. And so I was like, I was pretty frustrated with all of that. So I do think that there's value in going with Peacock. I love that Peacock has, or NBC has, a with the Premier League, like they know how to do soccer.
Mhm.
And so I think like if they can bring that same level of quality or just an experience, I think it's going to be great. And I think that this is something that, all right, I always know where to find my team and all of that. So I do think that the Super League has a little bit of an issue of like getting the word out that they are playing, that they are happening, that it is going on. Because I just happened to pull up Peacock at one point and be like, oh, there's a game in an hour and a half. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize that this started that weekend, which was weird because I'd watched the Riverhounds game the night before, and you think they would have made a bigger deal on the broadcast about, hey, USL Super League is starting. And so just interesting stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really torn on I understand why they wanna be on sort of a national broadcast. I get all of that, but from a consumer's perspective, I do like the idea of knowing there's one place you go and this is where you find it, and, yeah, I mean, we're dealing with that with the Premier League now, where it's like every weekend I'm having to look like, "Up, where can I watch Villa? Oh, it's on USA. Oh, it's on Peacock. Oh, it's on NBC." Like, and it's okay, I guess I can't watch them this weekend or whatever it is. So I know that's how they get you. That's how they get you into the cable packages. But it would be great to maybe potentially see the USL do something similar, where maybe you are on sort of one of these national packages, but you know that you just go there and that's where you get all of your USL action all of the time. So we'll see. Just an interesting thought here. Go ahead.
The Premier League is interesting because I think like, yeah, you're never sure exactly which but you know the range of like
Right.
it's either you're either gonna when you pull up your Apple TV, you're either gonna find it in the Peacock app or the NBC Sports app.
Mhm.
It's not like, oh, here's this totally other, and the for USL, the thing that I feel like I've experienced this year is the experience of watching a game on ESPN Plus is very different than the experience of watching the game on Galazo.
Mhm.
And not that either one is better or worse. I'm not saying that, and I'd have to think about that a little bit more. I'm just saying it's different.
Yeah.
And whether you find the game on whether you find the Villa or Brighton game on USA or you find it on Peacock, you're still getting the same experience and the same quality and the same, whatever. And it's like, okay, cool. I know what to expect when I turn the game on, no matter where I actually find the game. USL, I feel like, has been very different this year. That you're like, I'm not sure exactly where I find the game, and I'm not sure what I'm gonna experience when I watch it.
That's a really interesting point because it feels like for the EPL, you kind of have NBC in general is invested in producing the product, and therefore you have teams of people who just specialize in the EPL, just as you would have with the MLS. Apple is very invested in the product, but as soon as you start to have multiple outlets who are invested in the product, I think that somewhat dilutes the end product that you're going to get because they don't have all of the coverage. So they may not be as invested. And so you get some of these announcers that are coming in making the same Steelers jokes all the time, anytime they're covering Pittsburgh or whatever. And it's like they're actually not as in tune with what's happening. And so therefore the end product isn't as strong as it could be. That's interesting. Um, hmm. Okay. Um, the one other shout out I wanted to give was we did our pre-gaming episode with Bradley Sample, which is really good. Go listen to that, and you need to go look at the picture that he took because I still get like shaky looking at the picture. But it was cool. We've talked about Danny Rivera a lot in terms of his role in the team and sort of talking to Brad, and he made it very clear that Danny is one of those guys in the locker room that early on sort of like puts his arms around the new guys and is showing them the way and like leading them into this is what it means to be a Hound and all of that, which does not surprise me at all. So just to give him another shout out, plus that him and his new wife are now expecting, which is amazing for them too. So just everything's coming up aces for Danny Rivera at this point. But if you haven't checked out that show, make sure that you go check it out. But Hounds heading to Birmingham this week, basically a 6-point swing on the line. I did talk to Kaylor Hodges of the USL show in our insider episode about Birmingham. If you've not listened to that, go check that out. It was very interesting that he said that their biggest issue at this point is they literally don't have a striker. They just sort of have taken Stefano Pino, and who is a winger, and kind of made him a number 9, but they literally don't have a number 9. But otherwise, all of the guys that we've sort of come to know about Birmingham are there. It's funny because it feels like of all the teams that we talk about, Birmingham always seems to have the players that we remember Birmingham for. So the Enzo Martinez's, the Tyler Pashers, like it's the same sort of guys year after year. But it was interesting. And, I'm sure you have thoughts on this, but he actually openly questioned on the show about why we're not playing Sterling as a number 10 and then just have EJ running behind them. He was like, I don't know why we're obsessed with Kizza. And I was like, I don't know, man. Do you have thoughts on that? Or do you have thoughts on whether or not you think that maybe we see that this weekend or not?
Has Kaylor been listening to Mongols all season long? Because I feel like that's what we've been talking about. No, I mean, I think we've made that comment multiple times over the past 6 or so months of, hey, what are we doing here, and like why are we obsessed with Kizza? Because he's not giving the output that we would like, and I don't think you're losing a lot by putting some of our different guys on there. So I do think, I mean, he's got a point of like, what are we doing with our striker? And it is funny like hearing him say like Birmingham doesn't have a striker, because I'm still wondering, do we
Right.
have a striker? We have some guys who play striker, but he went on to finish that comment of like, we just need someone to stand in the middle of the field and basically breathe. I'm like, we have a couple of those guys who stand in the middle of the field and basically breathe, and it's not working for us either. So I'm not sure it's going to work for them as well. But I think like I would like to see, and I think I made this point a couple of weeks ago, and you guys keep referencing it, but I think my thing is, all right, cool, you got 10 games, try to win them. Like, you got to do something. What you've done to this point in the season has not won you enough games to be in a playoff position. So doing what you've always done and expecting different results is the definition of insanity, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we going to do different in the next 9 games to win some games? And that's and to the point of what you guys have been talking about over the last couple weeks, we've got to score goals. Like that's it. That's the whole kit and caboodle at this point, is like, can you score goals, and can you score more goals than the other team? And we don't know yet.
Yeah, just sort of looking at how Birmingham has performed in their last 3 games, they have a draw, a win, and a loss. So they drew 2-2 to Hartford, they beat Monterey 2-1, and they lost 1-0 to Detroit. Now, when you look at that, you can say over that same 3-game span, we don't have a loss. So are we actually doing better? No. To your point, because they have that win, they have 4 points, which is still more than our 3. So we have to get wins. And this is a case where a 6-point swing would be huge, and we have another chance to play them again in a few weeks. This could potentially be a 12-point swing against a team that's currently 7 points ahead of us. What's interesting, and I should have asked you this before, but I know that you've started looking at sort of playoff scenarios a little bit and kind of how things could potentially shake out. A 12-point swing against a team like Birmingham would be massive. I'm wondering if that would be enough on its own to kind of get us above the playoff line and knock them out, but maybe not. They're currently 7 points ahead of us. Do you think that's too much of an ask?
I I think what's interesting about that point of them being 7 points ahead of us, last weekend they were 8 points ahead of us. And we got a gift. We got a major gift on the back of us kind of failing to go 4 minutes without giving up a goal. Um, we got a major gift in the fact that almost every other team in front of us lost.
Mm-hmm.
And so at this point, you look at, okay, they're actually only 7 points, but they were 8 points. So we did actually close some of that gap. Would it be nice to say we're 5 points behind them? Absolutely. Because then with a win this weekend, you're only 2 instead of 4. And still with like, hey, if we win both of these games against Birmingham, we're still a point behind them in the playoff run. Um, is that enough to get us into the playoffs? No, we got to beat a couple of these other teams too. And so I don't really think it matters. Yeah, I mean, you would like 12 points against Birmingham or 6 points against Birmingham to have that 12-point swing. We still got 2 wins in the next 10 is not enough. So how do we get more than that? I guess is my question. So I think this is an important game to win. It does close a gap a little bit. We know what Indy tends to do at the end of a season, and they're right there with Birmingham. And so, you know, if you can keep closing gaps, then you're putting yourself in a position where you can win, where you can get in. And so, the key is just to get in at this point, and you got to get as many wins as possible.
Is this a must win?
Technically, no, but practically, yes. I do think that you've gone 7 games without losing. You have, but in your last 3, you've tied every single one of those. So I do think that this is a point of like, hey, if you're gonna go on an 8-game unbeaten streak, you would like it to at least be 4-4. And so can you get it there? I think is the key for this game is like you wanna get it there. And so I think last weekend I think was interesting. Um, and I don't feel like you guys necessarily talked about this on Monday, but we did score 2 goals.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's interesting after 2-0-0 draws of, hey, we actually did put a couple goals in the back of the net. Now, did they come from forwards? No, we talked about that. But we did score 2 goals. And so I think if you can keep that going of, okay, we got the scoring touch back a little bit. Like, let's see what and can we get the defensive side of the ball back this weekend? I think that gives us a good chance to win. And so I'm not sure. My main feeling right now is I'm not sure from anybody from Indy on down is all that good this year. And so I think the East representative in the final is probably going to be Louisville, Charleston, or Tampa Bay. It's probably not going to be anybody else. But okay, that means we still have a chance. But like I said, we got to get wins. Draws aren't going to do it at this point.
Yeah. I was gonna say the last 2 times that we played there, it ended in draws, so that's not great. I think we talked about if you look at the total number of points that we're thinking we might need, even if we win out at home, you have to be getting wins on the road too. And so this would be the perfect place to do it. If the Hounds win this weekend, it will be Lily's 400th win as a coach. My question for you, prediction time: Do we get there? Do we get 3 points this weekend?
I think we do. I think last week was an interesting one for me, and it's feeling wise, it's a killer when you give up a last minute goal. But I thought from the time, we gave up the 13th minute goal to go behind, I thought we played really well from there. And I thought we rebounded really well. We didn't let that get in our heads too much. And then we find the goal with a couple of minutes to go. Now, you got to be disciplined from that point out and not give up the goal to lose. So I was encouraged by the way we played. I still don't love Danny Griffin playing center back. Did it work for most of the game? Yes, it did work for most of the game. So I can't be mad about that. But I think I just want to see us be disciplined and not if we get up, which I think we can in this game, not give up late goals to lose. So what's nice about right now is I think we're in a good spot. Our There are lots of teams dealing with lots of injuries at this point in the season, and lots of guys who are unavailable, and lots of guys who are we're not dealing. We've already dealt with that, and so we're dealing with a lot of guys who sat for a bunch of games in a row, who are decently fresh, who are. So, do I think we can put our foot down on some teams' throats at this point in the season? Yeah, I do think we can do that, and so that's what I hope to see. So I think we come. I'm gonna say 2-0 Hounds. I think we go in there and get a good win, and it gives us some good feelings going to the end of the season.
I like that shout. I was going to predict a win as well. I don't know why. I think like you said, we did get 2 goals. It was kind of scrappy. It was another like good performance. And this is a case where Birmingham just lost to Detroit, which we know that we drew with Detroit recently, and could have beat them. And this is a case where we're going to find out with the Hounds' backs against the wall what happens. And I still feel like that there is enough veteran experience on this team that when their backs are against the wall, they're going to show up. Plus, the one thing we haven't mentioned is that we do have the Birmingham Dream Killer. We said like, what good is Kizza? Well, watch Kizza come out and get a hat trick in this one, and we'll go, oh, okay, great, like, good for you, man. So we'll see. But I like the 2-0 shout. If we can get back to basics, keep a clean sheet, keep Pasher off the board, um, and put 2 behind, that does give you sort of something to look and point at as we head down the stretch here for the final 8 games. So yeah, I like it. Um, Anything else for this one?
No, no, yeah, it is fun at this point in the season because it is like, okay, can we make the playoffs? And there's so many times where, okay, you're trying to figure out. It's just a different feeling from the last couple of years of like,
Yeah.
all right, can we get the last couple? Can we get a home playoff game? Like, how many games do we need to win to get a home playoff win? And it's a different feeling, and it can be a fun feeling at times of like, oh, we're on the outside looking in this time, and so we got to figure that out. And so I'm excited for the next couple games, and I do think for Bob that's an interesting place to be because he hasn't been there at the end of a season like this for the past couple years, I guess. I think back to 2020, and we had the final. What was that, like the final game of the season against Hartford, or second to last game of the season against Hartford, and like we lose that game to not win our group. And so it's like that, but the rest of the season we were leading our group until Hartford caught up to us in the last 3 games or 4 games. So I think it is interesting of like, what does Bob do when you are on the outside looking in, and it does become desperate times, and how does that change the way you play? How does that change the way you operate? How does that change the way you coach? And so it could be a fun end of the season. So still trying to enjoy the ride, and still trying to maintain positivity that we're gonna make the playoffs.
Yeah, agreed. And as Bradley Sample said, he doesn't view it as 9 games. It's like 9 finals. So let's see if the team shows up and plays
Yeah.
that way, and can get massive 6 point swing on the road this weekend. So
Yep.
That is what we think. Let us know what you think. Obviously, make sure that you go check out the game. I believe that there is going to be a watch party at the pitch, so you can go check that out. The Hounds have been promoting that. Otherwise, best of luck to the team as they head to Birmingham this weekend, and we will be back with more Hounds content for you very, very soon.